Chapter 9 is about long-term liabilities. The long-term liabilities are those that a company pays back after more than 1 year. Now, the most common type of long-term liability is bonds. So, what is a bond exactly? A bond is an instrument, and this is a legal instrument based on which companies and governments or municipalities or even school districts can borrow money from the public. The bond market is the largest market in the world, even more than the stock markets and the currency markets or the commodity markets. In these markets, um, the um, the companies or the governments actually borrow money, and then the beauty of bonds is that um, those who lend money on these bonds can be um, investors like you and me, small investors, or it can be large institutions, or it can be countries, or anybody of any size can invest in these bonds, and therefore there is a huge secondary market for these bonds. In other words, these bonds, once we lend money to the lender, to the borrower on these bonds, we can actually trade those bonds in the open market. So just to visually show this, there is a borrower on the bond, and then there is a lender on the bond, and the borrower borrows money at time t is equal to 0 and then pays it back at whatever duration of the bond. For example, if it's a 5-year bond, the borrower will pay it back in 5 years. Now there is a secondary market here in which the lender can dispose of the bond at any point in time after purchase. Now, for the purpose of this chapter, we are only going to look at the journal entries and understanding the terminology from the borrower's perspective. And borrowers are typically governments, companies, municipalities, and so on and so forth. Why would companies need to borrow? Why would government need to borrow? Why would municipalities need to borrow? For expansion, for investment in positive um, NPV projects, and for funding many new programs. Now let's get back to some basic features of a bond. And before we look at basic features of a bond, we need to absolutely understand something called present value, or also known as time value of money. I have a question for you. Would you prefer $100 today or $105 1 year hence? Now, the answer to this is it depends. What does it depend on? It depends on the interest rate, the prevailing interest rate. So if and by interest rate we mean a safe interest rate, um, what you would get, what interest you would get by investing in a safe FDIC insured bank or a government bond, etc. So coming back to, it depends on the interest rate. If the prevailing interest rate in the market equals 6%, you are better off taking the $100 today, investing at 6%, and making 106 1 year from now. However, if present interest rate equals 4%, you are better off collecting $105 1 year from now. This concept is the fundamental building block of time value of money. Now let's learn some bond terminology which would help us understand how to calculate the issue price of a bond, also known as the present value of a bond. The first thing that we have to understand is the bond is issued by the bond issuer, which might be a company or a government, at time t is equal to 0, and it is redeemed at time t is equal to 5 in this case, in my example, because the time period of the bond is 5 years. Now the face value of the bond in my example is going to be $100,000, which means on the bond certificate we are going to see that the borrower of the bond, which is the company or the government, for example, is going to mention I owe so and so, whoever the person is who's lending, $100,000. So this $100,000 is on the face of the bond certificate. That's why it's called the face value. At a contractual interest rate, which is also known as stated interest rate. This is the contract between the borrower and the lender. So the stated interest rate. So our goal is to find what is the worth of this $100,000 today, and also find out what is the worth of these streams of payments made by the company, also known as the stated interest. What is the present value of these stream of payments, and what is the present value of this 100,000? Okay, so together it is known as the issue price. The present value of 100,000 and the present value of these streams of interest rates together is known as the issue price of the bond. Now we are going to calculate the issue price, and for that we need to know the market interest rate. Suppose we were to say that the market interest rate on this bond is 8%. That means the market values this bond at 8%, and the stated interest rate of this bond is higher than the market interest rate. So that means the bond issuers are offering more than the market for this bond, and therefore it's a premium bond. Now going back to calculation of issue price. Step 1. Calculate the present value of $100,000. How do we do that? Go to present value of $1 table. Be careful in the exam and do not go to the present value of $1 annuity table. You have to go to the present value of $1 table, and at the intersection of the market interest rate and not the stated interest rate. So emphasis at the intersection of the market interest rate and the time period, you will find what is known as the discount factor. And the discount factor in this case at the intersection of 8% and 5 years is 0.68058. So if you multiply these two, the present value of 100,000 is 68,058. I would like all of you watching this video to go to your present value tables in your textbook in the appendix and come up with this number on your own. Step 2. We have to find the present value of this stream of $10,000. Now, the stream of payments is known as annuity, any stream of payments. So the present value, so because there is a stream of 10,000s for 5 years, we have to go to the present value of $1 annuity table. And once more, at the intersection of the market interest rate and the number of years, we will find a discount factor, and we will multiply 10,000 times the discount factor, which in this case is going to be 3.99. So 3.9927. So this is going to be 39927. So now if we add the two, so the final step, step 3, is to add 68058, which is the present value of 100,000, and then add the present value of the stream of 10,000s for 5 years. This is going to be the issue price, or also known as the present value of the bond, and this is 107,985. Now this could be a couple of dollars off because of rounding, and in the exam you will not have a problem that will be so close in the answer choices because of which you will struggle because of rounding issues. Rounding should not be a problem. So this is the issue price on the bond. Now the only other thing you have to remember is if the interest rate is paid semi-annually, you have to do something slightly different, which will be shown in the next slide. Now in this slide we are going to look at the same details as the last slide, except that the interest is going to be paid semi-annually. we have to calculate the issue price. So if we draw a timeline here, the company will repay 100,000 in 5 years, but there are 10 interest payments of $5,000 each because interest is paid semi-annually. So now the first step is to find the present value of $100,000, and for that we would go to the present value of $1 table, and at the intersection of the semi-annual market interest rate which is 4% and the number of interest periods which equals 10, because 5 times 2, the interest is paid semi-annually means twice in a year. So for 5 years, 5 times 2, 10 years. So at the intersection of both, we are going to get the discount factor. So at the intersection of 4 and 10 in your present value of $1 table, you're going to see 0.67556, and you can practice this by yourself before the exam to make sure you are also seeing the same numbers and you know how to do these computations. This is the first part. So this is step 1. In the next step, we have to find the present value of these streams of 5,000s, except that now it is for 10 time periods. So we'll go to present value of $1 annuity table, and at the intersection of 4% and 10 time periods, we are going to find the number 8.1109, and please confirm this for yourself. That would be your practice, and you would get $40554.5. So step 3, we add the numbers in step 1 and step 2. And we get what is known as the issue price of the bond. And don't worry if you do not get the same, sorry, this is a comma, and just to confirm, 10, 11, 11, 8 and 10. So $108,110.50 is your issue price on this bond. You might get a few dollars off for rounding, and that doesn't matter.